What's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff, and today I'm going to chat with you guys a little bit about the music industry and what's going on right now. So, if you guys haven't been paying attention lately, there's been a big change going on in the United States, and it's about tariffs. And so, if you're not really aware of what's going on, we're going to get into a little bit of that just to give you a snapshot of what's going to be happening and how this may affect you as artists and musicians. So if this is interesting to you, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because I will be having conversations like this more often on the channel. So tariffs, what are they and how do they work? In a nutshell, in a basic form, essentially all a tariff does is it puts essentially a fee onto services or products that may be imported into your country or let's say business or whatever way it works. For the sake of the context, we're talking about a country, okay? And so what then happens is that companies that use your country as a place to import their products needs to now pay a fee, which is a tariff added on for them to provide that service. And all that really is going to do is either incentivize them or make them feel as though they need to work from within the country to avoid any tariffs, or make their products and just pay the tariffs to import into this basically fair share of the market. Okay. So, why is this important and why is it controversial? Well, the reason it's important is because it does kind of create a pathway for income to happen or for income to be received, or the biggest portion of real estate that you as an artist may have. And so what this does as a relation to musicians is it means that there's going to be a shift in culture in how people consume your media and how people find you as an artist and how you're going to have to shelve your products. And so what does that mean? That means a lot. And so we're just going to look at like the basics, right? And so let's think stereotypically, right? When you hear popular modern music today, many artists and musicians tend to weave in brands or maybe popular, foods or companies and things like that. It's not going to be as lucrative for American artists to do that simply because of things such as tariffs. And all that really does is it just shifts the attention. It doesn't really mean, people will stop doing that. It just means they will have to be intentional about who they're promoting in their brands and in their music. And then in the other sense, in popular music and media, there are a lot of connections between other industries like technology. You see us using ringtones, screensavers, wallpapers. We do pretty much everything in the music industry that has to do with technology. And so when we are considering that, we have to be mindful of what that means for the certain industries that we are cooperating with and what that means for how they will be affected, because it will affect us as well. And the next thing you'll have to worry about is going to be typically the props or tools and resources we need to use as artists. A lot of the resources we use for, let's say, software and a lot of the resources we use for hardware will now be a little bit more lucrative to be made here within the tariffs. Okay. And then the next thing you're going to be worrying about is how you're going to basically understand props like which vehicles to promote in your music videos, um, which kinds of companies you'll work for or work with to get your artist wardrobe. What kind of makeup will you be using for female artists? And all this is going to be something that you don't have to think about. But if you do consider these things and what's going on in the political stage within, America, you can find ways to spot opportunities and find ways to avoid pitfalls. So I'll give you an example of an opportunity. There was somebody I was having a conversation with about tariffs, and this person was a business owner. They do hair. They do hair for women, like braids, weaves, and dreads and stuff like that, right? And I was basically explaining to them how the tariffs work and things like that. And they were like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense as far as what I'm trying to do as a business owner. And so then she asked, so then why do people have such a problem with the tariffs? And I was explaining to her that the most people are going to have a problem with prices going up, um, any kind of like change in the economy, because they will be on the consumer side of things. And so the reason it will make sense for a person who's creating is because you will understand the process it takes to go from idea to sale, and what it really means to kind of place a value on something and commit to it. And so if you don't have that from the creation side or the creative mindset, then it's going to seem like a rise in price is going to be shocking and come from nowhere. But in actuality, there is a pretty good trail to explain why prices would change and things like that, right? And so as the conversation went on, we then started to think about other ways this would be lucrative for somebody who is actually creating and manufacturing within their industry. So for her, it was hair. And so I was explaining, let's say you get a brick and mortar business or building to house your salon or your hair salon, right? Something like the scissors and the clippers and the chairs and the door frames and the light um, holders, I can't think of the word, but the things you hold your light bulbs in and your shelves and all that stuff, the steel and the metal and all that stuff, it's gonna kind of play a role in where you get these products from. The next thing you're gonna have to think about are your actual hair products. Where are they coming from, and what companies offer you the best, deal for your bang? And I guess the next thing you could think about is marketing and branding. How will we be marketing in the future? Will this be more of a localized thing? Will it make more sense for you to kind of like focus on the people that are like really really intimately known for your business, or would it make more sense to try and market to as many people as possible? Who knows? But if you're going into it with this kind of like, what am I going to do to get what I already have, it kind of mindset, it's not really going to work because you're not prepared for what's coming down the pipeline, which are these changes in tariffs and things like that. So to relate it to musicians, I think the biggest changes are going to be our cooperations with these industries, not necessarily, AI making beats for us or writing our songs. I think it's really going to be, now we have to really, really consider what phone companies we're going to stream our music off of. Who's going to manufacture vinyls when we get into, vinyls being a more mainstream form of consumption. So it's going to be a shift, and you're already starting to see it. Like some artists, you're seeing them throw in like electric vehicles in their music videos. You're starting to see a lot more AI music videos where they're just kind of like compilations of ideas and maybe prompts put into the AI. You're seeing a lot of different people trying stuff, but what's going to actually stick is what's going to be interesting because of the controversy behind being a, let's say, manufacturer of art and creativity. A lot of people who are within art and entertainment and things like that, they're not necessarily innovative. They're not necessarily creative. They're not the people who look at a world and then try to figure out how they can change it. Some of them just look at the world and just reflect it. And that's not a bad thing. It just really shows you where you kind of lay as far as the changes of the world. There are some artists that are going to initiate the change, and then there's artists who kind of thrive through changes. And then, of course, many of us will fail and fall off. But let me know, what do you think? Where do you think artistry and musicianship is going to go as we do get more technologically advanced? I do want you to keep in mind in this conversation that 100 years ago, 1925, music was a lot different back then. Technology was a lot different back then, and it took 100 years to get to where we are today. So in the next 50, it should be a lot quicker to be way more advanced than we are today. So just keep that in mind about trying to stay conventional and traditional and maintaining values and things like that. So, like I said, if you enjoy this content, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and I'm out.